Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mackie and welcome to my most anticipated recommendations vlog ever. I'm the world's probably biggest hopeless romantic. I read mostly romance, so here's my favorite rom-coms and romances I've read since coming back to reading over the past couple of years into one combined recommendations video, because it's the month of love and everyone should be reading romance. So I'm here to tell you which ones are my favorite and which ones you should pick up. Let's just directly get into it. If I have to guess, because my math is always really off, I would say 90% of everything I read is romance, which means I have mastered my ropes very well in this little topic and I have quite a few amazing recommendations to give you. I want my videos to feel like FaceTiming with my besties, so these are the kind of books I would go ahead and recommend to my friends on FaceTime, and you know, that's who you guys are. So let's just directly get into it. I have them sorted out in a couple of different ways and we can talk about those really quick before anything else. Starting off with my little no spice pile. These books can essentially be read by anyone and you know, they have no spice in them, so if that's what you're looking for, I've got you. The first book I have on this list is The Do-Over by Lynn. This is coming full deja vu circle. I don't even know what I'm trying to say because I actually read this in a 24-hour readathon last year in the week before Valentine's, which is around the time I'm filming this, so it should be exactly a year since I've read this. Haven't stopped thinking about it, and while I do want to read more of her books, I do even own them. Don't know why I haven't picked it up, and I really should, because this book essentially follows this one girl. Her name is Emily. She watches her boyfriend kind of cheat on her on Valentine's Day. So she's the biggest hopeless romantic, like all of us are. She's, you know, so excited for Valentine's, but when it comes around, she watches her boyfriend Josh cheat on her and she's suddenly like, oh my god, my Valentine's is ruined. And so she goes back home. Her life is literally shredding and falling apart and it's the worst day of her life. And so the next day she wakes up. You know what happens? It's Valentine's Day again. So this is essentially the Groundhog's Day trope, wherein she's repeating the same day over and over again until she changes something up. And so at some point she decides, you know what, gonna let it go, just gonna do whatever I want because it's gonna repeat anyway the day. And so, you know, she's doing all these crazy things she wouldn't have normally done, and she's doing it with her chemistry lab partner, who is this guy called Nick. They've got, you know, a couple of things going. They have somewhat similar personalities and interests, and you know, they're really going along swimmingly, except she doesn't normally, you know, hang out with him. So there's sparks flying between them. There's the Valentine's Day background. It's kind of perfect, and it had to be the first book I recommended because it literally takes place on Valentine's Day. It's the perfect book to read this February the 14th, and you know, it's the perfect book to swoon over because every single aspect of this had me giggling, kicking my feet, going giddy over it because it was that good. Next up, I have Begin Again by Emma Lord. This is one of her lesser known books, but I actually gave it 5 stars because I love it. Every time I try to sell this to someone or kind of, you know, talk about its plus points, I always mention that the main guy in this, the love interest, this guy called Milo, he makes his own coffee blend. And can I just say, that's all you need to know. Essentially, this book follows this girl, Andy. She's kind of trying to, you know, have the perfect college experience because she actually lost her mom when she was younger. And now she's finally gotten to get admitted into the college where her mom used to go when her mom was her age. And so Sadie's just happy to have started this new phase of her life that she's always been waiting for. Except not everything's going the way she wished it was because a couple things go wrong at the beginning. So we have that. We have the background of college games essentially, wherein there's stuff going on in the background with the college that, you know, she's taking part in, and it's the perfect fall read if you want to read it. But at the same time, I would recommend it for any time of the year because, you know, she's going on all these little challenges and mystery quests, I guess you can say, for the college. She's having fun in those competitions, and at the same time, Milo, essentially, he has her taking part in this other secretive thing that's going on in the background. It's really fun. You can definitely go ahead and check this out if you want to because it's really good, and the way they talk about most things is hilarious. There is one little bigger plot twist that takes place, I think, towards the end of the book, which is kind of crazy, and it had my jaw on the ground because I did not see that coming. And majority of this book is a slow burn because nothing really happens between the two of them until I would say maybe the 90-95% mark, which is kind of crazy, but also that's my favorite kind of romance to read because I want to read about the passion and the yearning rather than anything else, and this book did that perfectly. Next on the recommendations list, I have Second Chance Summer by Matson. Now, can I just say, this book isn't necessarily a romance book, but I'm here recommending it under, YA, no spice, because this honestly feels like it has every single thing a young adult book should have, with the best romance subplot. So it's not necessarily a romance book, it's more of like a fictional book, but I had to recommend it for the romance. The thing is, you need to keep in mind, if you're reading it during Valentine's, be prepared to cry, because the last 150-ish pages I was crying, bawling my eyes out, sobbing so violently, because it's very sad, and you just need to keep that in mind. Essentially, it follows this girl Taylor, and she kind of has her father who is actually got cancer. So his doctors let him know that he's got about 3 months left, and so they decide that okay, they want to spend the last 3 months they have with their dad at their summer little lake house. So they kind of go there, Taylor, her dad, her family, everyone included, and she's actually got history with that place because she has a best friend there. She used to have a boyfriend there who she kind of abandoned at some point, and so it's all coming to bite her back, wherein the people over there don't really want her there. They don't know her situation yet, and so she's not having the best time in her life. But slowly, there's acceptance everywhere. She's starting to come to terms with what's going on with her father. There's a lot going on in the background as well, but the romance subplot is second chance romance with her, childhood lover, I guess, so childhood friends to lovers. And I loved it so much because Henry is such a blueprint in this book. Everything about this was perfect. I feel like the vibes in this, especially the friendship before anything, builds up so amazingly, and then the romance between the two of them was obviously stunning. And then we have the ending, which really pulled on my heartstrings. Again, keep in mind, you should only be reading this if you're ready to cry on Valentine's. If you don't want to, skip it, because genuinely this is gonna make you sob even if you think you're powerful enough not to feel it. So I'm just gonna say that. Now next up, I have a couple books which don't have any spice, but I wouldn't necessarily go out and call them YA, because in my head young adult essentially equates to books that can be read by people who are in the age category of that. So essentially all these books that I recommended to you are either college going kids or just teenagers in general. They aren't like adults or whatever, and there's no spice in them. These books don't have spice in them, but they also follow adults, so I wouldn't necessarily call it YA, but you can definitely read it if you want to. The first one I have on the list here is The Bodyguard by Katherine. Obsessed with this book. In fact, this week I'm actually going ahead and rereading some of my favorite romances, a couple of which are actually shown in this video for a separate Valentine's Day vlog for you guys to watch, because I really want to get to them. And I read this a couple years ago over the summertime. I believe I read it on my phone, but it was so good that I had to have this physically. Essentially, it follows Hannah and Jack. Hannah, she's like this nursery teacher looking type woman, wherein she just looks innocent and alright, except she's the bodyguard in this book. She can literally kill people with a spoon, and Jack is a famous actor. Something happens in Jack's life and suddenly he's being stalked, and his PR crisis team is just like, listen, dude, you need to hire someone, you need to hire a bodyguard to protect you, because we don't want to deal with the scandal again. So they end up hiring Hannah, who is the bodyguard here, and all is fine, except Jack kind of needs to go visit his mom who has cancer, and he doesn't want her worrying that he needs someone to protect him, he needs someone to look after him, and that's not really good for his mom's treatments. So essentially Hannah and Jack are gonna fake date, so the mom thinks that Hannah is the girlfriend, she can come with them to his family ranch, kind of figure that situation out. And the mom's not going to be worried either, but then sparks begin to fly the way they talk to each other. I don't think I've giggled in a book as much as I was giggling in this. This was also, I think, one of my very first rom-coms I've ever read, and it was really good. It holds a special place in my heart for that reason, but also for the way it made me feel. And whenever I remember back on the time that I was reading this, I get so giddy because there are certain scenes I remember so vividly. And I'm actually rereading this week, like I said, with my cousin in like book club or whatever, so can't wait to get to that. If it's that good for me to sit down and reread, because I genuinely don't reread books that often. This is probably like my 4th reread ever since coming back to reading. Then you guys should definitely check it out because it's so good and I love it. I recommend this to everyone who wants to get into romance because this is the perfect starting point. And you can go from there. The next book I want to recommend, I don't have it physically because every time I speak about it, I say at the end of my recommendation, oh my god, I should have got myself a physical, but I forget every time. This time is no different. I actually started this, I think like a year ago at this point as well. I read it on audio or whatever, but I never got a physical for some reason. So again, at the end of this vlog, I'm going to go place an order for my physical because this is the kind of book I need in my life. Essentially, it's called The Chemistry of Love. It follows, I believe, Marco and this girl called Anna, but I'm not really sure if she's Anna. because there's like a couple books on this list that also have Anna's in them, and I'm like really confused right now. Anna, she kind of works at this like makeup place. We're just gonna continue to call her Anna, even if she's not Anna. I'll put it on screen or whatever, that'll be embarrassing later to edit. But she works at this like makeup company essentially, and she kind of starts falling for one of the guys in like the top positions there. She starts falling for the younger brother, I think, of the owner or something like that. And so, you know, it's all good, except the younger brother is essentially marrying this woman who could potentially be a gold digger after the family's enterprise. So the older brother, Marco, kind of, you know, enlists Anna's help, and he's just like, oh my god, my younger brother tries to grab everything I get. So Marco's gonna start going out with Anna, so that the younger brother kind of wants to get with Anna, and he leaves his gold digger girlfriend behind so that, you know, she's out of the picture, their family firm is intact, and you know, Anna gets the guy she wants. That guy is gonna copy his brother, so he's gonna go with Anna anyway, and the firm is saved. Or that's essentially Marco's grand plan. They go along with it. This is the funniest book I've read. It was so good, every second of it. Again, this was a slow burn, nothing really happens between them, but when it starts, oh my god, the small things in this are done so correct. And you know, I can't stop thinking about this, especially the fact that Anna's grandparents, who she lives with, essentially own like a bunch of birds. And you know, there's like a couple funny instances that happen with them. Every character in this book is so lovable and likable. You know, everything about it is just so amazing. And again, I remember the time I read this book so vividly because it, you know, had me giggling, laughing, giddy over every single little thing. And I love Marco. I wish he was real, but unfortunately he's not. So we're gonna move on to another romance book before I start spiraling about the fact that every man I love in fictional books does not exist. Now it's time for, I guess, like another romance recommendation, because this is basically what the video is. But this book kind of does have spice in it, except it's closed door. So there are mentions, but there's nothing on page as such. It's closed door. Keep that in mind before anything. And essentially this is The Blonde Identity. A woman wakes up in Paris. There's a man standing above her head holding a gun to her forehead, and he's just like, get up, run. So essentially she finds out she's a spy. She's done something to upset like a bunch of people, and now they're after her life. So she starts running away, except at some point she meets the guy who's holding the gun to her head. And as it turns out, he tells her, oh, you're not a spy, you got it all wrong. She's the twin sister of the spy who messed a couple things up. So her twin sister went rogue. This woman lost her memory somehow. This woman ended up in a situation where everything now revolves around her, and now everyone's after her life because they think she is the twin who messed things up, and they think she is responsible for everything, whereas she did nothing at all. She doesn't even know who she is at this point. And the man who was standing above her head with the gun, Sawyer, essentially, you know, teams up with her. He kind of offers to take her around with him as they're trying to hunt for the twin sister that went rogue, the actual spy, because her life is in danger. He's the only one who can potentially help her get her memories back and protect her. Except, is he even telling the truth? Because she doesn't have a memory. How does she know? And you know, it's a really good book. I loved every second. In fact, I actually recently found out that there's going to be a second part to this following the twin sister story, the one who went rogue. And I'm so obsessed, honestly. Cannot wait to read it. This was actually one of the first books I ever read on Kindle when I first got it. And again, one of the most amazing times of my life. I feel like I'm saying that for every book in this video. But it's so true, because every single second of this was amazing. The action and the romance was so well balanced out. I have read another Ali Carter book as well, but it's more like a holiday romance, which is why I'm not recommending it around this time of the year. But she knows how to do her spy books correct, and honestly, just pick this up and get into it. I know people find the cover cheesy, but like, it's worth every second. You should probably try it, and it's the perfect Valentine's Day book to sit and read in one sitting because it's so small, under 300 pages. It should be done pretty fast, but that's it. Now moving on to my book recommendations that have spice in them. So if you don't want to read anything with this kind of, you know, book in it or whatever, you can kind of skip this part, but then that's it for the video. So now getting into the spice recommendations. First book I have on this list has to be an Annabel Monaghan. It's gonna be Nora Script. So I have read a couple of her adult contemporary romances. I am reading the one that came out last year. I think it was called Summer Romance at the moment. Again, having such an amazing time with her books. This is another one of the romances I will be reading or rereading, I guess, this week, because the way Annabel Monaghan writes, I feel like everyone on BookTube has said it. I'm not the first one to come up with it or whatever, but she knows how she writes her quotes correct. She writes the way it should be worded, not one little bit extra, not one little bit less. It's just perfect, her writing. It's to the point the way it should be. and everything about it is amazing. I cannot stop remembering certain scenes again in this book, which is why I'm rereading it this week, and I can't wait to get to it. So let's talk about this. Essentially, this book follows this woman Nora. Her husband has kind of left her, dumped her, just walked away from her life, and she's got a couple of kids who are older. So this book doesn't really fall in the normal romance category wherein you're following, a younger woman or whatever. This is following someone, I believe, in her 40s or in her early 30s or whatever. And so, we don't really have romance books representing that age category, which is already why this is amazing. But she kind of has to now live her life as a single mother, look after her kids. They aren't teenagers necessarily, but they're older, I believe, or something like that. I'm not really sure. So to kind of make ends meet, she's a writer. She writes this one story about her husband walking out on her, and suddenly that story is getting adapted to a movie because it was a wild success. So now in the story, she kind of references this little house in her house. So she's got this like little, I don't even remember what it was called, but it was like a mini house at the back of her house, her writing home, I guess, and she would go write there sometimes. And so the movie crew is actually coming to film at that writing house of hers at the back of her house in her backyard. So Hollywood essentially comes to her backyard, filming in front of her, doing everything there. She's having a good time, except the lead actor, who's essentially playing her husband in the story, he kind of stays behind. He's Leo, by the way. He ends up staying behind at her house. They kind of strike an agreement where he pays her to kind of use that place as like his own personal resort for a little bit. But things start happening between them. Again, this is a shorter romance, but I feel like everything was packed in just correctly. If this was a little longer than it was the first time around, I would have given it 5 stars. But I feel like this time already, the way I'm anticipating reading it, especially the quotes on love, life, and friendship, I know it's going to be a 5 because it was spectacular, amazing, just the perfect book. And it's also really good for summer if you want to get into it. So, this is a good book to read. Again, you can finish in a day, like I said. So it's also going to be a fast one if you're looking for something to read on Valentine's itself. And I love it. I love the way these two characters made me feel. I love every second of it. And it was a really good book overall. Next up, we have another book I cannot shut up about. Again, I'm on my reread right now. This is how much I got done sitting down in one day. So you should know that I'm actually absolutely obsessed with this. Essentially, this book follows Anna and Liam. Now you understand why I was confused with the other book wherein I also called the woman Anna, because the one I'm reading right now has an Anna in it. But essentially, Liam is this guy. He kind of married Anna, who wasn't very well off, to kind of get student housing. So student housing was cheaper for them in terms of family housing or something like that if they got married, and so they did. And at some point they left each other. Nothing really happened between the two of them, and it was all right, except one day Anna's in the deepest dump of her life. She's not having the best time. Something's really gone wrong, and now she's having the worst little pit. And so she's at her house. Someone comes knocking on her door. As it turns out, it's Liam, and he lets her know that now this year, the year he's knocking on at her door, it's gonna be their 5th year of marriage. And she's just like, wait, didn't we separate or something? No, apparently the agreement kept going because Liam actually had this thing in his family inheritance trust or something, wherein once he marries someone, he needs to stay married to them for 5 years to be able to get his inheritance money. So they never actually separated, and now Liam is letting her know that his family, which is full of billionaires, it kind of gives it high stakes or whatever the story, is kind of beginning to suspect that their marriage is a sham because he's never brought Anna to the house for them to see her for 5 years. So now Liam's younger sister, called Charlie, she's kind of getting married. They're going to a private island, and they kind of need Liam to bring Anna there so his inheritance isn't sacrificed, and they know his marriage is not a sham. And so he's kind of paying her to come with him to a private island in Singapore to pretend to be his fake wife during an actual wedding of his little sister. So nothing really goes wrong, and so it goes from there. It's marriage of convenience, fake marriage, whatever you want to call it. And it was so good. Rereading it around the second time, I think the first time I gave it 4.75. I was really stupid back then because this is one of the funniest books I've read. Christina, Lauren, they're my favorite author duo ever. And this is already a 5 stars. I'm already letting you know. No suspense for the video that comes out later this week. This is 5 stars for me. This is one of the most amazing romances I've ever read. And if you have to read it, please do, especially if you're on vacation or anything. But also it's got the marriage setting, which is one of my favorite. I eat it up anytime, so you can also probably read it anytime, which includes Valentine's. And the way it's so funny to the point where they talk to each other, I'm giddy, I'm kicking my feet, squealing over them. I'm loving every second, and I cannot believe these people are not real, because I wish they were. I wish, everything about this was real, because there's so much depth to it as well, which, normal romances don't really have. It's more rom-com-y, but this one is really good. I love the side characters too. They were actually pulling on to the story, and wish they had their own books, but they don't. But regardless, it's a great book, and if you can't already tell, love every second of it. This is my second time reading it, and it's gotten even better somehow, so you should definitely pick it up. On to our last 4 books of the list. Next up, I have My Roommate is a Vampire. Now, if you've been on this channel, you will know that the backstory behind this book, I've probably read it in like 5 different videos at this point, because I started reading this I think a couple years ago during Halloween season on my Kindle. Started really enjoying this because the banter between the 2 characters is really good, and so I wanted my own physical. So I put it down on Kindle, ordered my physical. Amazon messed up my order. I didn't get it until Christmas season. So me starting this book in October, end of October, Halloween season, getting it during December, Christmas season, really put it off for me until I picked it back up, continued reading, and remembered why I originally wanted it and loved it in the first place. Essentially, I'm so sick of saying this because I've said it maybe 20 times on this channel. To summarize this book, it follows Cassie and it follows Frederick. Frederick is a vampire, Cassie is a human. She kind of gets kicked out of her old apartment, so she's looking for somewhere to go, and she finds this really cheap place on Craigslist. So she's a little suspicious about it, but she goes and checks it out. It's in the best part of neighborhood, and it's really freaking cheap, so there's something got to be wrong with it, right? So essentially, she's at Frederick's home. He's a vampire who's actually kind of lost his memories because something went wrong in the past century or whatever, and suddenly he doesn't know what's to be expected of modern life, and so he kind of needs a roommate to kind of watch the human go through their life and kind of adapt to the way they go about their life. So he needs someone to kind of train him how to be adapted well to modern century, because he doesn't know how to behave, and so he's looking out for someone. He meets Cassie. She's the one suspecting if his apartment is weird or whatever, but then things start working out. She goes into his life, she starts helping him out, but then secrets come out. Suddenly she finds out that he's a vampire, and it goes from there. Again, there's backstory to it, and I really enjoyed it. It's a good fun old time. I feel like, again, you can sit down and read it in a couple sittings only, because it's so funny, and because he's got the kind of mindset from a few decades or few centuries technically ago. It's giving modern era Bridgerton, if that's something anyone's interested in. It's giving modern era Regency, and I loved every second, because for him things are very scandalous, considering the fact that he didn't see the last century. He was literally sleeping for whatever reason during, and so now he's learning to adapt to modern day. She's helping him. Again, it was like a really good book. Now I'm thinking back on everything about this and like trying to control my internal squealing, because it's very funny, especially the way they talk to each other, wherein she thinks he's being sarcastic. He's really not. He doesn't actually know how modern day works, and it gets funny in that sense too. And again, it's a good book to read any time of the year, not just Halloween. But yeah, this is definitely something you should check out this Valentine's, because if you want like a paranormal spooky romance, this is right up your alley, and I got you. I feel like this book has been on every single recommendation video for every single booktuber over the past couple of years. I'm talking about none other than Flawless by Elsie Silver. Again, I am rereading, which is why my bookmark is sticking out. Hardly have any left. I'm probably going to go finish it after I'm recording, or after I'm done recording this. Essentially, this book follows Rhett Eaton. He's a popular like cowboy, bull rider, whatever, and something goes wrong in his career. Suddenly his reputation is tanking. Something's really gotten messed up, and his sponsors are leaving him. So his agent starts freaking out, and he's just like, oh my god, Rhett, you need to pull your act together. And to do that, the agent is essentially making his daughter Summer kind of go and kind of be hired to be Rhett's babysitter, essentially. So she's gonna have to look after him, make sure he doesn't get into any more trouble, so his career doesn't tank completely. And it goes from there. The banter and the tension in this book is done right. Elsie Silver knows what she's doing with the small town cowboy setting, and this is my 3rd time rereading this book. I don't think I've ever read a book 3 times, especially since coming back to reading, that is not Harry Potter. It's this book, and it's so good. You should please go ahead and pick it up and read it. This is actually a whole series. It's called the Chestnut Springs series, but I haven't actually read any of the rest for some reason. I've only read this 3 times. I have the rest of the series. In fact, after I'm done recording the rereading romances, I'm actually going to go ahead and read these books out for a specific separate video about time. And so I had to come and put this into this recommendations video anyway, because I want this video to be up and running running for the next few Valentines at least down the road, and I know by the time I've read the rest of the series I'm gonna love it and want at least one of the books to be in the recommendations. And so here we are. This book also has like a found family aspect which kind of links across the rest of the books, and there's more storylines to be approached, all very interesting plots, so definitely something you can check out. And every second of this was so good because the way they talk to each other, the banter in this is top tier high quality. Please read it. Second to last, we have none other than Beach Read by Emily Henry. Could I make a recommendations video about romance books and not include this? I think not. Essentially, it follows January and Gus. Both of them are writers and they both have the worst case of writer's block. So they aren't really having the best time. They aren't able to, write their next books out. And the problem is they've already signed these agreements with their agents that need them to write these books by the end of summertime, get them ready and have them off to publish, except they don't have anything written because the writer's block is overtaking them. And so essentially January kind of moves to this like little small town where she finds out that Gus is her neighbor. They already know each other from like college days or whatever, and there's history past or whatever you want to call it over there. There's a lot to unpack, but she writes romance books, he writes literary fiction, and they kind of strike up this deal wherein they're going to swap genres. So she's going to write literary fiction, he's going to write romance, and whoever has a book written first, it's like a competition or whatever, by the end of the summer is kind of the winner. And because they already have the past college rivalry going, they kind of want to, both of them, or at least January wants to really win it really bad. And it's Emily Henry, she can do no wrong. The way she writes, the way she does anything honestly, especially in her romance books, is amazing. And this is one of my favorite romances I've ever read because it's so good. There's so much depth and nuance to it. It's more of like a women's fiction with like a subplot of romance, but again, every aspect of this is amazing. It's definitely something that's more emotional and heavy packed, so keep that in mind because I was crying at the end of it, and I don't think she meant for us to cry. They were more happy tears than anything, but I loved every second. And once you're done reading this, it'll feel like you're a part of this online fan club, because wherever I go, since I finished reading this, I keep spotting beach read references that I never saw before, and you probably will as well. So definitely pick it up for that reason, and also for the fact that January and Gus are my favorite people in this world, even though they don't exist. So that's something to keep going back over. Definitely check it out. I've stacked every single book I recommended in this weird pile that seems to be balancing so precariously it's gonna fall on me. So I'm gonna make this fast because I don't want to be buried under books again. Last time I was doing like a book haul video and they all fell over. That wasn't the best time. But next up, and finally the last book we have on the list, I could not go in a single video without recommending Marriage for One by Maise. This is my favorite romance book I've read in my lifetime. I've read it 2 years ago at this point. It's still my favorite romance book. I recommend it to every single person because it's that freaking good. If you haven't already read it, please read it. I think about both of these characters every single day, and that's not an understatement because I want to reread it so bad. I'm actually saving it for my birthday week, which is why I won't be reading it this week. But keep in mind, it's an amazing book and you should check it out. Essentially, it follows Rose and Jack. If those names kind of sound similar to you from Titanic, keep that in mind because that's the funniest part about it. In Titanic, they don't really have a happy ending. So here, you don't expect one for Rose and Jack, but they do get one regardless. Rose, this woman, is essentially broke and she has an uncle who kind of passes away in this accident. And now he leaves behind this like place or piece of land he had in the best part of New York to her, except in his will he says that the land kind of needs to go to Rose's husband. Now here's the thing, she's not married. It was kind of, the clause in the will was written in the sense that it should go to her boyfriend, but then he left her weeks after the uncle died. So now Rose has no one. She kind of needs that shop really bad because she actually has invested all of her life's money and savings into coffee equipment. She kind of wants her coffee shop. So for all those of you girlies who have always wanted to be able to run a coffee shop, a bookstore, a flower shop, this is the perfect book because I love the setting and vibes of it. But she cannot walk away from this piece of land now that she's invested all her money into it, and she really needs it really bad. Except the uncle whose land it originally was, the one who passes away, his kids are now contesting the will. They want the land for themselves. So she kind of needs to find someone that she can marry and it'll go to her husband, so she kind of gets the land before anything legally, gets her in like a bad situation. And enter Jack. He is kind of like the partner, I guess, of the firm where the uncle used to seek out law guidance or whatever. So his lawyers are essentially from this firm and he's the partner here, and he overhears, her situation one day. So he walks up to her, he offers to marry her because in his opinion, he is one of the youngest partners at the firm. No one takes him seriously enough, and if he has a wife, at least he'll look like like he's more serious and like a family guy or whatever, and she can come with him to certain work events or whatever. So he's just like, listen, let's get married, works out for both of us. And so it goes from there. It's so much deeper. It's a slow burn. Again, this is like maybe 600 pages, but it doesn't feel like it because every second was amazing. And it's marriage of convenience, but the way it's done is so good. There's this one point in this book when she's counting his smiles because he doesn't smile like at all. It's grumpy sunshine. And the first time he smiles, like genuinely, you guys need to read it. There's so much that's amazing about this book. I'm literally unable to shut down my squealing since I've started talking about it. And it's hard to hold back because of how much I love this book. This is one of the best books I've read in my life. I wish I could, really just trade my soul and reread it for the first time. And if you haven't read it, I'm so jealous of you because you get to read this amazing precious gem of a book for the first time. And you're so lucky. But slow burn is done correct, grumpy sunshine is done correct, marriage of convenience is done correct in this book. And I still need to go read more of this author's backlist because Ella Maise knows how to write this sort of book really well. But I loved every second. This is one of the best books, one of the best romances I've ever read too. So if you're reading one book or if you're taking one book out of this video, please let it be this one because I need more people to be talking about it and more people to be talking about how amazing it is because it's that good. But regardless, we've reached the end of this video. I have so many books here stacked up. Hopefully they won't fall on me. And hopefully you guys got like a fun romance recommendations from this video for Valentine's Day because in my opinion, everyone should have at least one decent book to get to during Valentine's because this is the time of the year that these books come in so handy because they're really bringing in the whole Valentine's cheer and spirit. Do I wish Valentine's was a national holiday at this point? Yes, I do as a hopeless romantic. But despite the fact that it isn't, we can always have a fun time celebrating by reading some of these romances. So hopefully you got a fun recommendation out of this video and hopefully you have more recommendations to give. So if you have any for me specifically, if you can kind of tell from my book taste that you've seen throughout this video, definitely comment down below. But that's it for today's mini recommendations vlog. I had to put this out specifically now because it's so in theme for the month of February and I had to talk about my favorite ones. So now that we're done here, that's it. I'm gonna go maybe get these sorted out really quick so they don't fall on me. But if you had a fun time coming along with me and if you got a recommendation or two, if you enjoyed this video, basically like, comment, share, subscribe, YouTube things. And I'll see you hopefully very soon for my next video because that's gonna probably be another reading vlog. I'm not really sure. I'm trying to post twice a week regardless, so I'll see you very soon and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Until then, I'll see you. Bye.